This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
What do you do when you shave your pubes?
It is long, hard, but
You know, I mean, it just kind of gets all over the place. You just deal with it and you just wash down the drain, one of the two.
you're so fucking weird. All right, you ready to go?
Well, let's do it.
All right, a special edition of the Practice Squad. We're going to be doing things a little bit different today. Still going to actually try to do our sports fun sports sandwich, but the sports are going to be all mock draft, and I don't want to waste too much time because I know how time consuming this can be. The draft is tonight. I'm taking care of the odds. Stroz is taking care of the evens. We're going to break at 16, have some fun, and then come back. Pick number one, not going to waste any time at all. Bengals, Joe Burrow. Franchise quarterback, best quarterback in the draft since fill in the blank. Andrew Luck is my answer. I mean, no brainer. This is already written down.
Yeah, I'm going to go with pick number 2 for the Washington Redskins. Best player on the board, Chase Young, right? Best player in this draft, arguably, Chase Young. We're going to go and add him to what I think is going to be a pretty elite defense.
I think the Lions have one of the most obvious picks at 3 that they've had in I don't even know how long.
Oh, it's so obvious, right?
If it goes Burrow, Chase Young, Jeff Okudah is the obvious pick at number 3 unless they trade down, which, by the way, has seemed to have gotten some new life over the last couple days. People saying the Dolphins are interested to move up and get a tackle. Might be a smokescreen, but it's also possibly that it's a smokescreen, and they're still trying to get up to 3 to stop the Chargers from coming up to get Tua. So certainly possible they trade down to 5. Supposedly even possible they trade down to 4. I think if they're at 3, if they're at 4, if they're at 5, Jeff Okudah is still probably going to be the guy they get.
Oh, he would have to be. If they move back, has to be the guy that they pick up. You're right. There has been a lot of steam building towards somebody moving up, whether it be the Chargers, whether it be Miami. I know Miami has called the Bengals 3 times. The Bengals did not pick up the phone. They tried to lay things out with Washington, it sounds like, and Washington is kind of on the fence here. So Detroit at 3 could be a prime trade partner for a team like Miami. Number 4, the New York Giants are going to select Jedrick Wills, offensive tackle.
Wow,
Look, you've got Saquon Barkley, who is a absolute stud, right? You've got your franchise quarterback in Daniel Jones. You need to protect these guys. You need to add some offensive line help. I'm going offensive line with the 4th pick.
So this is my 3rd mock draft of the year, and I believe Isaiah Simmons has gone to the Giants in every single one, but tackle is a need, and that's supposedly why the Dolphins are interested in trading up, which makes pick 5 interesting. If the Dolphins are supposedly interested in trading up to 3 for an offensive tackle, it doesn't really matter if the Giants go offensive tackle at 4. There's kind of 4 or 5 guys in the offensive tackle, the top of the draft at offensive tackle who are kind of interchangeable. I think Jedrick Wills leans towards the top of those guys, but there's certainly debates. Andrew Thomas is another option. I don't buy it. I think they want to, I think it makes a lot of sense for a team that is, that went all in on the tank last year, got so many, I believe they have 3 firsts and 2 seconds, so many resources. Whether this is at 3 or 5, I think Tua is their guy.
I believe they have 23 picks between the next 2 years' drafts. That's unreal. With Tua being gone, Chargers are on the board. Chargers are looking for a quarterback. I know they say they believe in Tyrod Taylor. I don't believe in Tyrod Taylor. I'm going to go with Justin Herbert. Keep the West Coast kid on the West Coast and have him help the LA Chargers.
So I happen to think Herbert's going to fall today.
Ooh.
I think that's considered my hot take of the draft. I'm personally not a Herbert fan. I've called him the Mitch Trubisky beta. He's the version that came out before Mitch Trubisky. Not quite as finished of a product. So that tells you what I think of Justin Herbert. Difficult here for the Panthers because Isaiah Simmons is really starting to slide. They could use a guy like Isaiah Simmons, but defensive line is their biggest need, and there's 2 high-end prospects still on the board at defensive tackle. Oh boy, this is actually tough. I think in an earlier mock, I had them go Javon Kinlaw because he's a better pass rusher. I think he fits what the Panthers want to do more. But if they're going to take the chance if they're going to pass on Isaiah Simmons, who's probably the most valuable player on the board right now, I'm going to have it be for the best defensive tackle on the board, and that's Derek Brown.
I could see Simmons going to Carolina. I could see him being a solid fit. Remember, you had Luke Kuechly who retired, and Isaiah Simmons reminds me a lot of a guy like Luke Kuechly. A little bit undersized, kind of a weird tweener, but can do a whole lot and disrupt a whole lot of plays on offense. So, I like what you did though. Derek Brown. That's a solid pick. All right. So we come to the Cardinals here at 8, and Cardinals invested heavily with their quarterback last year. This is another team that is in dire need of help along the offensive line. Makes sense for them to go with Tristan Wirf at pick 8.
This is one of the cool things about doing mocks with different people, and I hope you don't mind. I'm going to plug my website real quick.
No, do
if you want to see my other mock drafts, I have them both up on bnevershuts.com. Isaiah Simmons, as I told you, went 4 in both of those. He's sitting here at 9 for the Jaguars. I think if he's off the board, I go with Javon Kinlaw, the defensive lineman out of South Carolina, which is a bigger need for the Jaguars. But I think we've seen the last few years, Jaguars really like to focus on drafting defense, and they're big on the value guys. And Isaiah Simmons falling to 9. I mean, I think Isaiah Simmons is pretty clearly a top 5 player in this draft. So it's the best value pick. It's still a position that they can easily get him on the field right away. This, in my opinion, is the best pick of the draft so far. At 9, the Jaguars getting Isaiah Simmons.
For value alone, absolutely. The thing is with Isaiah Simmons, has to go to the right coach who knows how to utilize him. Brown sitting here at 10, they've got their choice of offensive tackles. I must be just on an offensive tackle hot streak here.
I mean, yesterday when the reports started coming out that the Dolphins were interested in trading up to 3 for an offensive tackle, there were some thoughts that this could be the biggest run on offensive tackles we've ever seen inside the top 10. I didn't go offensive tackle with the Dolphins, but if I did, it would be very possible for 4 to go in the top 10.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Mekhi Becton out of Louisville. Really solid player all the way around. A lot of power at the point of attack. He doesn't have any red flags. I think he could start day one, and he's going to make that offensive line that much better.
And here's the thing. You go Mekhi Becton. There's still Andrew Thomas on the board, who's a top 15 ballpark kind of guy. Seen him in different places, but Josh Jones out of Houston's another offensive tackle who could go in the top 15. At 11, I have a good friend down here in Houston who's from New York. He is a Jets fan. He wants them to go offensive tackle at 11 and wide receiver if there's not a top guy still on the board. In this case, there are still 2 top guys on the board. I'm torn on what to do here because in my mind, this is a team that just needs a wide receiver so badly.
Absolutely.
You could make the case that it's a great wide receiver draft and they wait, but Jerry Jeudy at the top feels like one of the safer wide receivers we've seen. First round wide receivers can kind of be very volatile. Jerry Jeudy's not that. I think Jerry Jeudy's a reliable wide receiver. You know what you're going to get out of him. And so the Jets are going to go and get their number 1 receiver. I think he might be the number 1 receiver his rookie year, which is not very common at wide receiver.
I like that pick. That's a solid pick. With Jerry Jeudy going, this might be where we get a little bit of a run on wide receivers. Oakland's on the clock next. I think the guy who screams Oakland Raiders, right? He does one thing extremely well, and that's run very, very fast. Henry Ruggs III is their pick at 12. This guy, look, Oakland is in dire need of more offensive weapons. I think this is a solid pick for the Oakland Raiders. Mike Mayock, John Gruden, this is their type of guy. Elite speed, has good hands, can get down the field and create separation.
Now, I've had CeeDee Lamb above Henry Ruggs in the previous mocks I've done. And I personally think it will fall that way, but Henry Ruggs, pretty clearly the third of the 3. And by that I mean, tier 1 is Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs. A lot of people I know a lot of people think the 49ers go wide receiver here. I don't see it. And when you're doing this, I think you do need to take into account the competence level of the organization. And when I think of the 49ers, I think they put things together well. They make the right kind of moves. And this is such a wide receiver draft, good wide receiver draft, such a deep wide receiver draft that I don't think they do it at 13, despite the value in CeeDee Lamb, because CeeDee Lamb is a hell of a value after Henry Ruggs comes off the board. I think the 49ers would rather find a wide receiver later. Now, important to note, they do pick at 31, but they don't have a 2nd round pick, a 3rd round pick, or a 4th round pick. I think that 13 is a very likely place for them to trade back. It's possible at 31. I wouldn't rule them trading back at both. But if they stay at this spot, I think they look to replace 36, I believe, year old Joe Staley, who maybe you're not replacing him this year, but you're certainly getting ready to, because they, as of now, lack extra draft picks and I can't trade back. I think it's important for them to add depth while they can, because there's not going to be very many opportunities to do that in this draft. I'm going to take Andrew Thomas, the offensive tackle he's out of Georgia, I believe.
Out of Georgia, yep. All right, on to the Buccaneers at 14. So, if you ask me, with the Bucs adding everything that they've been adding on offense, I think they need to shore up their offensive line. That being said, I think it's a little bit of a stretch to go down and grab a guy like a Josh Jones at 14. I
don't think it is, for the record.
You don't think it's a stretch to go grab a guy like Josh Jones?
I think I actually made that pick for the Buccaneers in my last mock.
I just feel like it's a little...
He is number 5 for sure, but I've seen him as high as 15 in big boards.
I feel like he's a little bit of a reach at this point. I'm gonna go and grab the best edge rusher that's available, and that's Chason out of LSU. I think he can help add to that defense and help balance that offensive attack.
All right. At 15, the Broncos could also use an offensive lineman, but there's a guy on the board at another need, cornerback, who some people supposedly we've been hearing have above Jeff Okudah, and that's CJ Henderson, the corner out of Florida. This is kind of about where he's being projected, but again, some teams supposedly have him above Jeff Okudah. I don't, but still a need for the Broncos and kind of fitting exactly where CJ Henderson falls on big boards anyways. And the last pick of our first half of the mock draft, Stroz, the Atlanta Falcons.
So the Atlanta Falcons, a ton of smoke about the Atlanta Falcons trying to move up somewhere into the top 5. Atlanta Falcons are another team that doesn't have a lot of draft capital in this draft. They do need some help on defense. I'm gonna go with Javion Kinlaw to help bolster that defense on the inside.
All right, so that's gonna wrap up the first half of our mock. Stroz, can you just read through that for me really quickly? Coming up in a second, I had a tweet the other weekend about my neighbors keeping me up till 4:30. We're going to dig into that. And on the other side of that, we're going to wrap up the mock. But Stroz, to wrap up this, can you go ahead and give us a rundown of how the first 16 picks went?
1 through 16. So no surprise here. Joe Burrow goes number 1. Chase Young goes number 2. Jeffrey Okudah goes number 3. Things get a little bit sketchy at 4 with Jedrick Wills, the offensive tackle, going to the Giants. Tua goes at 5. Justin Herbert goes at 6. Derek Brown goes at 7. Tristan Wirf, 8 to the Cardinals. Isaiah Simmons falls and gets a ton of value for the Jags at number 9. Mekhi Becton, 10. Jerry Jeudy to the Jets at 11. Henry Ruggs III goes to the Raiders. Andrew Thomas goes to the 49ers. Chason goes to the Buccaneers at 14.
Do you have a hard time saying his first name too?
Was it I just don't want to sound like an idiot.
I think it's Clavon, but I'm not sure. No, I have the same trouble.
Yeah, have you noticed that? I just kind of skip over the first name. Yeah, CJ Henderson goes at 15 to the Broncos, and Javion Kinlaw goes to the Atlanta Falcons with the 16th pick.
All right, that's the first half of our mock draft. Again, coming up after the next segment, we're going to get to the second half. But first, my neighbors cut me up till 4:30 last Saturday, I believe. After, I believe in our last podcast, talking about how someone called the police on me. We're going to get into that. This is the Practice Squad. Okay, so I'm going to have to be careful about how loud I get here, because I sit basically with my back against the wall to the neighbors who I'm referring to. And I'm a bit of a loud talker.
You don't say.
Just a fun story. It's a little different here because of the situation we have. But I like to tell people, I've never been in the studio with somebody and had their microphone be lower on the board than mine. And I've done shows with, I literally have a running list. I've done shows with like 10, 12, 15 different people, and I've always had to have the microphone lower because I talk loud. But Stroz, you told me you wanted to get into it, and I think it's something worth talking about. I don't even know where we're going with it.
Okay,
kind of
so
like last week.
Let's pause for a quick second. Run me through how because you live in an apartment, so run me through how your apartment complex is set up. Because when I seen this tweet, and you've made different comments as we've kind of been doing these podcasts week to week about where you live. So kind of run me through what your neighborhood looks like, and then run me through what your apartment complex looks like. Because in my mind, I've got you living in, I don't know if you've ever been to Highland Park,
No, not really.
just like inside of Detroit. I've got you living in a place that looks like Highland Park, Michigan. And there are parts that are okay. When I say okay, it's just kind of like a step above being like the gutter. And then there's like the hood. Like it is just like, oh my goodness.
It's probably somewhat reasonable. I would say I live in the version that you said is okay. Like it's not nice, but it's not the worst thing in the world.
Okay.
So I live in a giant apartment complex. I don't even know how many units they have, but we have like 8 pools. Just to give you an idea of how big it is.
That's crazy.
And then, so essentially, they're like, the setup is like groups of 4. The buildings have more than 4 units in them, but like, there's a lot of space. It's like 4 units and then a lot of space, and then 4 units and a lot of space. I don't know why that is exactly. But so, there's 2 levels. There's like me and my neighbor on the bottom level, and then there's 2 people above us on the top level. And like, here's the thing, like, because I'm not living in the nicest area, I get a really big place for a hell of a cost. I think I talked about it when we very first restarted the podcast. I don't really know how else to lay it out for you, but I think part of the reason you're asking is because kind of what happened, last Saturday. My neighbors party fairly regularly. And this is, by the way, my 4th apartment. And I don't care if I hear my neighbors. I could not care less.
Real quick. 4th apartment that you lived in ever, 4th apartment in Houston.
Ever. Only first
ever.
apartment.
Okay.
And like, sometimes they're loud during the day. I don't really care. Sometimes they're loud at night. I don't even care. But the problem is they like hanging out outside. And if they hang out in their apartment when I'm trying to sleep, there's 2 full walls in between us. If they're hanging out outside, you got to keep in mind, like, my bedroom window or my bedroom wall, outside wall has a window. So there's a lot less stopping the noise. And when there's a big group, the distance from their door to my window is maybe 15 feet. And there were, 10, 15 of them on Saturday night. And they were really loud, 2 o'clock in the morning, and not a huge deal. I don't usually go to sleep till 3, 2:30, 3 o'clock. Okay. Hopefully they'll, quiet down or end the party soon. Which, by the way, I already have a little bit of frustration with them having parties because I didn't totally understand it actually until yesterday. I was kind of thinking through it yesterday. And like, I'm a super social person. It's really hard for me to not see people. It legitimately takes a toll on me, mentally and emotionally to like have all my, contact with people limited to, something like this, Stroz.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm doing okay. Like, I wouldn't say I'm suffering, but like, it does take a toll on me.
Yeah,
and
no,
so
it gets pretty crazy. I'm the same way. Like I said, I gotta go to freaking Meyer to get out of the house.
Yeah. So like, when I hear, 15 people at my neighbor's house, it's frustrating because like, we're not supposed to be doing that right now. And it's frustrating that like, they're just ignoring what's going on. Yeah. And it doesn't make me mad even. It's frustrating because I have been following it for quite some time. And so there's that already, but this stretched on Saturday until 4:30 and I was wide awake. I sounded like I was in the party and I did not want to open the door and say anything for so many reasons. For one, like, I don't want to be that guy. For 2, like, there's a big group of them. I don't really want to be surrounded by 15 people. Not like they're going to hurt me. I wasn't worried about that, but just like, with everything going on, I'm not trying to be in big crowds. I didn't want to do that. But like at 4:30, it was like, okay, this is never going to stop. And I mean, you could probably tell, if you talk to me, you listen to me, like, I'm not the person who starts very many conversations. I'm not afraid of confrontation. Let me make that clear. I don't know whether or not you would guess that about me, but I'm not afraid of confrontation. I will stand up for myself. But I'm not usually the one to start it. So even in this case, 90% of the time, I'd open the door, hey, guys, no big deal, just wanted to mention you're kind of loud. That's how I would normally do it. But like, it's 4:30 in the morning. It's just like, the level of, I don't know what the word to use is, like disregard for
Dude, it's
anybody.
that's total disrespect. At 4:30 in the morning? Come on, what are you doing?
I opened the door and I think I started with, "Are you guys kidding me?" Like, I think that's how I started. I was like, it's 4:30 in the morning. I scared the hell out of one of them because, again, there's a bunch of them. They can't all huddle on there. Like, apartments don't have a ton of space out in front.
Yeah.
So, like, some of them are, like, right in front of my door. I scared the hell out of one of them. And normally I would feel terrible about that. But honestly, it made me feel happy. Like, I was like, that's what you get. Like, it's 4:30 in the morning. Like,
just go home. Are you too good for your home? What are you doing here?
Here's the thing that was so crucial to me that, like, highlighted how disrespectful it was. Is the moment, and I want to give them, like, I do want to give them credit. They immediately went inside. They didn't give me any trouble at all. And so,
did they quiet down a little bit for you?
Well, so
or like,
that's
you were
where
able
I was
to fall
gonna
asleep?
Well, that's where I was gonna go. They walked inside and I could still hear them, but like, you put two walls in between me and the level, like, I don't think, I want to be as fair as I can to them. I don't think they understood how much of a difference being inside made.
Yeah.
Cause like, they like to hang outside during the day too, and that's like cool, like, I get that. But like at night, you have to consider like it affects the sound so much because the difference is there's either two walls in between us or there's a window in between us. And I just like, I can't, if you've never thought about that before, like honestly, cause I never sat and thought about how much of a difference it makes. But when they were outside, it sounded like I was in the party. Like legitimately, it sounded like I was in the party. I was hearing things like louder than I would normally talk to somebody. And that happens, cause when you got 15, 20 people, like you talk louder, it's a louder environment. But like if me and you were hanging out Stroz in the same room, I would have been talking quieter than I was hearing things in my room.
That's crazy. So were they all drunk and
I don't think so.
Up or what? It was just like who the hell hangs out till 4:30 in the morning unless you work night shifts?
They're younger.
Okay.
Quite a bit younger.
We sound like old men on this, by the way.
I don't know, do we? 4:30 in the morning?
4:30 in the morning. I don't know. Like, I remember when I was younger. I mean, when I was younger, I was totally reckless. But when I was younger, like, but this was a Saturday night. Yeah, Saturday night till 4:35 in the morning. That's all day long. That was like every other weekend.
Well, and that why I finally gave in and said something is because in my mind it was like, this isn't going to stop. Like this could be 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And, the reason I waited so long is because, like, at the end of the day, I don't have any reason to wake up. This is I record 4 podcasts right now, a week, and this is the only one I record before, like, 2 p.m. So I didn't have any reason to wake up. But at a certain point, it was like, I'm not trying to, like, not be awake tomorrow because I'm laying in bed awake all night. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, it was frustrating.
So here's a question for you. After you said something, you got some sleep, the next day, we'll say 5 in the afternoon, 'cause I'm assuming they slept most of the day. Did somebody come over, knock on your door and say, hey, sorry about that?
No.
Or have you had any interaction with them where they've apologized? No?
So here's the thing. I've had interactions with those neighbors in the past where they didn't speak English. So now in this case, there were a bunch of them there and somebody apologized in the moment.
Okay.
And they went inside. So I don't know if there is somebody in the house who speaks English. I don't really know who's over there, to be honest with you. So I don't know if they even could have. I honestly, I don't know.
So now I'm curious. Run me through what your first experience is with your neighbors.
Well, so when I moved in, there was nobody in the unit.
Okay.
They've been there, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 months. I don't have a whole lot of experience with them. The one time that cause honestly, they're either like outside in large groups or, I don't see them. Like I don't cross their paths very often. But the one time that I did interact with them and no one spoke English, they were hanging out again right in front of the door, and I asked them if they'd like me to keep my light on because we have outside lights, and I didn't mind. Like, if they're hanging out outside, I'm happy. It was late at night. I'm happy to keep my light on so it's brighter out there for them. And they basically told me like, don't understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you live in Houston. I'm just going to go out on a limb here. Are they Hispanic?
Yeah. So the area I live in, I may have told you this before, is known as, the Mexican ghetto.
Okay.
So it is a very Hispanic area. Honestly, outside of, they definitely do like to party. During the early parts of the night, they can be probably louder than they should, but I don't mind. This is the first time it's gone anything like 4:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
2 isn't crazy. Overall, I don't have an issue with them. It was very, very frustrating in the moment. I mean, prior to this, I'm trying to think. So again, 4 apartments. I had one apartment. This is the first apartment where I don't have to share a laundry center. I have my own washer and dryer, but I did in one of my apartments have to share one washing machine and one dryer with 4 units, and somebody routinely kept their stuff in there for 7-8 hours at a time. One of the times I knocked on every door, nobody answered. Not a single neighbor answered, and I know at least one of them was in the unit.
Mm-hmm.
So I was okay. I just threw their stuff on top of the dryer or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I had some funny experiences at my first apartment that I may or may not have shared on the podcast in the past. Let's just say I got to know about noise that was being made.
Yes. We've discussed this one before.
And those are the only times that I've really had much interaction with any of my neighbors in apartments. It's funny because I'm a very friendly person, but I'm not like a go out of your way to make relationships with your neighbors kind of person.
I got you.
If it happens naturally, sure. I don't think I go out of my way to make relationships with anybody. I'm friendly, and if there's a natural, reason to talk to somebody, I'll talk to them. But, I don't go out of my way to build relationships with people. It just kind of happens on its own.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people are very friendly with their neighbors, and honestly, it would probably be cool to do. That's just not the way I work.
Yeah. So generally, to compare and contrast you and I wouldn't say that I'm over the top trying to be your best friend if we're neighbors, but generally I will talk to you every chance I see you, usually wave at you. When all this started happening with COVID-19 and the coronavirus and all that stuff, my neighbor who lives directly across the hall from me, who seems like he's an awesome guy. He's got a great beard, fantastic beard. He's got one of those it's super, super long. It's probably down to his sternum, and he'll put it in a little rubber band, at the end there to keep it all together. Keeps it nice and oiled. He's got kind of a bald head too. Guy looks fantastic, right? Anyways, from what I understand, he's a writer for Reuters. So he's back and forth in the Middle East a lot, from what I gather, from what I understand. I haven't really had a conversation about what he does. This is just what I've gotten from my brother-in-law who ended up selling me this condo. So at this point, we've kind of had a few interactions with each other, and everything had just got shut down. And I was coming in, he was going out, and we kind of met by the stairs. And I went to go shake his hand, and he was just kind of and I was kind of you're right, my bad. You know what I'm saying? But that's just kind of I don't know, that's how I am, right? So I have an older lady who lives underneath me as well, and every time I see her, I'm always talking to her. We'll get into a 5-6 minute conversation about whatever the hell's going on. And it's just because I don't want to be the loud guy who lives above the older lady. You know what I'm saying? So right. She's pretty cool too, but. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of people who do that. I don't know, man. It's just a general thing for me. As friendly as I am, mm-hmm. I don't like to force conversations or relationships. I don't shut up anyways. So I'm either going to naturally.
That's why your podcast, or that's why your website is called B Never Shuts Up.
Yeah.
But you guys go check it out.
Yeah. It's got all my podcasts on there, YouTube videos and everything. So if it doesn't happen naturally, it feels weird to me. Mm-hmm. It feels forced. If I am forcing it, it feels forced. Mm-hmm. I'm not an awkward person in general, but if I'm forcing conversation, it becomes awkward. So not my thing. That was a very tame middle segment. Do you have any more questions you want to ask before we get back in the second half of the mock?
No, I'm just, I guess it makes sense to me because they don't speak a lot of English. So I guess the communication not really being there. Like I said, I feel like it's totally disrespectful that they'd be up till 4:30 in the morning. Use some common sense here.
Well, and again,
and nobody coming over to apologize to you after. Yeah,
moving inside was a game changer. And if you're listening and you're a partier, just don't hang out outside. It makes
such a party inside for sure.
Yeah, keep your party inside. All right, coming up, second half of the mock draft, kicking it off with pick number 17, Cowboys, right here on the Practice Squad. All right, so jumping back into the second half of the mock, it's the Cowboys up, and this is a direction I think might be a little bit shocking, but I think some teams like to make a splash in the draft, and I think the Cowboys are one of them. And I think the value of this guy being here at 17 will make it hard for the Cowboys to pass up. That's CeeDee Lamb. Should immediately jump into the number 2 wide receiver spot for the Cowboys. I don't think it's a need. I think a pass rusher or defensive end would probably make more sense for them. Could go somebody like AJ Epinesa. But man, I just think if a splashy player like CeeDee Lamb is on the board this deep, the Cowboys would have to seriously consider it.
Yeah, I like that pick. That's solid. That pick screams Jerry Jones to me. The Miami Dolphins, who have their second pick in the first round, sitting at 18. Offensive tackle is a major need for this team, but running back is also a major need.
No way. This early, they have another pick.
Yes, they do. And I think you can maximize your value and possibly get a offensive tackle later on with what is it? They have pick number 26. I think you can get your offensive tackle at pick number 26 to maximize some value there. You've got your choice at this point with 3 running backs who I think are game changers. DeAndre Swift, I'll be honest with you, I'm not extremely high on him. Compared to the other 2, has some shortcomings. I think J.K. Dobbins is probably the best out of the bunch. I'm going to go J.K. Dobbins with the pick at 18 for Miami.
I just can't see them going running back at 18 when they have another pick on the board. The chances that a running back goes between 18 and 26 are not very high. This would be an awful pick, in my opinion, Stroz.
What would you have them do? They have a ton of needs. Would you go wide receiver? Would you go offensive line? Would you go defense?
We had them go to Josh Jones is still on the board. I might even go safety.
You got Xavier McKinney there still.
Xavier McKinney's an option. Grant Delpit's another option. I mean, I just don't think running back goes between 18 and 26. Mm-hmm. So if they wanted to go running back, I would think you'd wait. And that's the other thing is there's 3 guys kind of in the same ballpark unless you really love one. But that moves on to the Raiders at 19. We've already had the Raiders. And by the way, we should probably make that known as we make picks with teams who have 2. So the Dolphins now have Tua and J.K. Dobbins. The Raiders earlier on in this draft took Henry Ruggs, handled the wide receiver need. Depends on whose big board you look at now on who's the next guy available. It is a draft that has a lot of corners kind of in this ballpark. The question is, which one do I want to go with? I'm definitely going to go corner. Let's go with a guy who I hadn't seen high on boards early, but has moved up them recently, Jeff Gladney, the cornerback out of TCU. Corner and, again, edge rusher are the biggest needs for the Raiders at this point. It's kind of a weak edge rusher class after Chase Young, and by kind of I mean very. And on the flip side, it's a strong cornerback draft class.
All right, so that brings us to the Jags, who are on the board. You drafted Isaiah Simmons with the 9th pick, so your linebacking need seems to be taken care of. You do have a disgruntled edge rusher, so edge might be a need. This team has a ton of needs. Wide receiver is definitely a need. You just released Marquise Lee. You've got Justin Jefferson sitting here from LSU. I think this is a solid pick, and you're getting a lot of value.
At 21, the Eagles on the board. I am a firm believer that they're going to go wide receiver. I've already done this in one other mock, and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to reach by most big board standards, but I think the Eagles are a team that's going to go and get their guy. And I think Jalen Reagor out of, I believe he's TCU as well. Yes, out of TCU is so what the Eagles want. He's a speed demon, going to make plays happen after the catch. I kind of look at him as filling the role that they wanted Nelson Aguilar to fill. He's obviously gone in Las Vegas now with the Raiders. I have a friend who used to work in the Philadelphia sports media, still working here with national sports media. He's of the belief the Eagles will trade back and go after Jalen Reagor. We can't do trades, so maybe he's right. Maybe they try to move back a few picks. I've seen him anywhere from the early second to the late second. So it is a reach, but I just think that he's the wide receiver that fits what they want to do.
That is definitely a bit of a reach, but I like your reasoning. Makes sense. Definitely makes sense. Minnesota's on the board with pick number 22. This seems like such a Rick Spielman type thing to do here. Xavier McKinney's still sitting there. Best safety in this draft. I think they go and they grab Xavier McKinney and help bolster that defense.
I've actually had Xavier McKinney going to the next team, which is the Patriots. I do think I agree with you that Xavier McKinney makes a lot of sense for the Minnesota Vikings. First safety off the board. Grant Delpit, another safety, available. The Patriots could go that route. They actually kind of have a lot of needs, which is a weird thing to say about the Patriots. You have to question Jordan Love here. I don't personally think they go Jordan Love. If Herbert were to fall, I think the Patriots would consider looking at a trade up. They're not going to draft a tight end this early. I'm going to go with something I think the Patriots have always valued, and that's a linebacker, Patrick Queen, out of Georgia as well. I keep like second guessing myself. LSU.
Out of LSU.
Out of LSU. I keep second guessing myself on where they're out of.
Patrick Queen's a stud linebacker, man.
Oh, they have the other top linebacker, don't they? It's Oklahoma. God,
Kenneth Murray out of Oklahoma. Yep, he's still sitting there. Which brings us to the Saints, and
Saints can go anywhere. They don't even really have a need.
Well, yes and no. I could see the Saints. You got to remember, Kamara's in the last year of his deal, so running back could be an option there, depending on what they want to do with Kamara. They could possibly need a quarterback because Drew Brees, it sounds like he's in his last year. There are different options for the Saints when they're sitting here at 24. I think what they end up doing though is I like your pick of linebacker with Patrick Queen at 23 for the Pats. I think they go and they take Kenneth Murray, who's been getting a lot of hype as the whole draft process has started to unfold. Probably one of the smarter linebackers in this draft. So I think the Saints go with Kenneth Murray.
The Vikings on the board with the 25th pick up next. They just took the safety Xavier McKinney a couple picks ago. I think the Vikings have to go wide receiver with one of these two picks. I don't know that it is the biggest need, but it is a need, and I don't even know who's behind Adam Thielen. I think the number one left on the board it might vary person to person in such a deep wide receiver draft class, is T. Higgins out of Clemson, and that's the way I'm going to go with the Vikings pick.
All right, T. Higgins. You also have Denzel Mims available as well. So T. Higgins is your pick for the Vikings. Now brings us to the Dolphins, who are on the board for the third time. First pick, they took Tua. Second pick, they took J.K. Dobbins. They're going to continue to add to that offense, and this time they're going to address their offensive line. Now you can go get Josh Jones if you believe he's a better fit than Ezra Cleveland, but right now those are, depending on which big board you're looking at, those are the two top offensive tackles. We're going to take Josh Jones out of Houston at pick number 26 for the Miami Dolphins.
That pick makes things really easy for the Seahawks at 27. Josh Jones, I was leaning away from him already, but the Seahawks do need to be better on the offensive line, and Josh Jones is a value pick at this point. We questioned if maybe it was reaching a little bit earlier. But at 26, that's a hell of a player who could find his way into the top 15. The only thing the Seahawks very clearly need more than offensive line is defensive line. They had one of the worst pass rushers in the league last year. Jadeveon Clowney, who is in the NFL been more of a run stopper than a pass rusher, still unsigned, probably one of the top free agents left. They gotta find some defensive line help somewhere. And I actually think this guy could go earlier, but it is a weak edge class, and we're gonna go with AJ Epinesa out of Iowa.
Wow, I didn't think he would go here, but okay. Puts Baltimore on the clock. Baltimore has a couple different areas that they could kind of lean. I think Grant Delpit, look, when you have John Harbaugh values defense. Secondary was his calling card. Secondary and special teams were his calling card when he was an assistant coach. I think you grab Grant Delpit, and that's a value pick at 28. This is a top 20 player on most draft boards.
Do the Ravens ever take anything but defense or offensive line in the first?
You'll take Lamar Jackson and trade up to grab him.
Yeah, they had to trade up to grab him. They didn't even do that with their own first. At 29, I think the Titans are honestly a little bit disappointed with what's on the board. Defensive line, offensive line, the biggest needs. I don't think there's an offensive lineman worth taking here. An acceptable pick. Get some pass rush pressure on the defensive line. Yetur Gross-Matos, the edge rusher out of Penn State, is going to be the pick for the Vikings.
Solid pick. I like him. If for some reason the Lions were to move up into the first round later in the draft, he was sitting there, I wouldn't mind them grabbing him. Even though AJ Espinosa would probably be the better fit for this regime's defense.
Worth noting, the Lions are only 5-6 picks away here. Very much it would be possible to get back up. They do have 2/3 if they wanted to go that route.
Last year, I think you kind of seen it. Aaron Rodgers didn't have a ton of weapons except for his running backs. I don't think his wide receivers were great. I think at this point you go and you grab Denzel Mims, wide receiver out of Baylor, help add to Aaron Rodgers and help bolster his offense.
So in what is now my third mock, I've been a little bit more prepared for you to take picks that I was going to make, but this one has caught me off guard. It's my last pick for the 49ers. Earlier on in the draft, I had the 49ers go offensive line with Andrew Thomas. Again, I think it's very possible they trade either or both picks, as they have no second, third, or fourth. Their biggest need at this point, now that they've addressed offensive line, is pretty clearly wide receiver. There's definitely, there's so many wide receivers that could go in the first. It's not a dramatic reach to go in a different direction. Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State is in play. Maybe Michael Pittman Jr. out of USC. I don't know. Let me see who the best player, I have two different big boards. Let me see who the best player available is according to that, because that would be the other route. DeAndre Swift out of Georgia. I don't think they go running back. The two top players available on Matt Miller's draft board are DeAndre Swift running back and Clyde Edwards-Helaire running back, followed by Cesar Ruiz. They're not going to take a second offensive lineman. So yeah, using Matt Miller's big board, it doesn't make any sense. Let's go with Brandon Ayuk, the wide receiver out of Arizona State.
Sounds solid. When we were kind of working through this, that was the guy who I thought you might take, and he makes a ton of sense for San Francisco right there. Feel like he might be drafted a little bit high, but if that's your guy, or if that's the guy who you think is going to help this offense, and again, we both believe that San Francisco is going to trade one of these two picks, it makes sense. So last year with the Kansas City Chiefs, this is a team that likes to play fast, likes to get up and down the field offensively. Defensively, I think they could possibly be better, but you ended up losing Kareem Hunt, who was a fantastic player, and you lost him going into the season last year. You kind of had to make do with your running backs. I think DeAndre Swift would be a perfect fit for Kansas City, especially sitting at 32. A ton of value. This is a guy who can come in and essentially do everything that Kareem Hunt was doing for you before he was released. So DeAndre Swift.
I do think running back is in play for the Chiefs at 32. I'd also just ask about defense. They, over the last year or so, have placed a priority on getting that defense to a better place, and you could make the case that with Patrick Mahomes, they can trust their offense with a running back or without a running back. But I do think it's in play. I'm just going to point out a couple interesting notes if you have any. Happy to hear them too to wrap this up. Jordan Love not making it into the first round. A lot of people have him finding it into the first round to a team like the Patriots. You could even consider the Saints getting a backup. Honestly, it's hard to see anyone taking this chance on Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think it's out of the question. The Packers could consider a quarterback. There's a lot of teams that here's what I think. I personally don't think 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, but I think we start seeing a run on quarterbacks in the early second. A lot of wide receivers: Brandon Ayuk, Denzel Mims, T. Higgins, Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. What did I count? Was that 7? It might have been 7 or 8 wide receivers. Offensive linemen had a run early, but then kind of disappeared after Andrew Thomas at 13. Andrew Thomas at 13 was the fourth offensive lineman off the board. Didn't see another one until the Dolphins took Josh Jones at 26. And as I told you, no running backs went between 18 and 26 for the Dolphins. Maybe J.K. Dobbins would have. Anything interesting to you? Stands out?
It was really and truly, it's the players that are along the defensive line. So I think early on, there is a premium on a few guys.
There's 3 guys, I would say. Maybe only 2.
That can really help your defensive line. After that, it's kind of, it almost feels like it's a roll of the dice. And same thing with linebacker. It really feels like there's only 2 linebackers who could step in day one and
Simmons.
really, Quinn and Murray, seem like they're the 2 guys who could step in and make a difference immediately. And maybe, and Simmons too. So I guess 3 linebackers.
You're like kind of looking at him differently as such a hybrid guy.
Yeah. I don't see him as a true linebacker. I see him as, not to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but he's a player that I'm infatuated with. I think he could be fantastic, but he has to go to the right coach and he has to go to the right team because they've got to utilize him a little bit differently than any other type of linebacker that you're going to have. This is a guy who can play the edge, but he can't play the edge on every down. This is a guy who can't really play a middle linebacker. He's going to be more of an outside linebacker. He can drop back into coverage. The guy can play safety. If you need him, he could probably slide over and play nickel or dime cornerback for you. So he's a piece that can be moved all around. He just has to go to a coaching staff that is going to utilize him properly. Almost like, so you remember how, I know college football is not really your thing. You like it, but it's not, you're not sitting down to watch a Michigan game. Michigan started using that Viper. It was a term that they had, and that's what, you had.
Yeah.
Khalid Hudson was your Viper.
I watch enough Michigan football to know what the Viper is.
Yeah, so I mean, like that's kind of the position that I feel like he's going to play. He's going to be this hybrid linebacker corner safety where he's going to play on the edge and he will get up and he'll blitz and he'll drop back into coverage and he's going to play a little bit of zone and that's just he's a different cat, man. He's super athletic. I think he's fantastic, but again, he's a guy who you can't just put him on any team. He's got to go someplace where they're going to really emphasize what he does special. Now,
with the Lions just a few picks away, I want to give you some names on the top of the big board. I don't know who you were using. I kind of used a combination of Matt Miller and Pro Football Focus. I'm going to give you the top remaining players on Pro Football Focus. Cornerback Christian Fulton out of LSU is actually ranked the 12th best player in the draft. He's a guy who's gone in the first in both of my previous mocks. Then you're jumping down to a guy whose first name I don't know how to say, the wide receiver out of Buffalo, Chenault Jr. I like him a lot. He's one of those kind of hybrid guys as well. He can play some running back, kind of big at running back, but can play some running back. That's a route I could see the Lions considering with their second pick. Michael Pittman at 22nd best available. Jordan Elliott out of Missouri, another cornerback out of Jalen Johnson out of Utah. A lot of cornerbacks. This is a draft that I think is very strong. It's kind of unfortunate for the Lions that I think the early second is going to be a very, very strong place to find a cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be unfortunate because it's not going to make any sense for them.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Terrell, another cornerback.
A guy who I'm super high on, there's a lot of tread on the tires though, is Jonathan Taylor. I think you need to address running back if you're the Lions. I know you don't like that. But look, man, Kerryon Johnson has proven time and time again.
If you were going to run a football team, you would draft a quarterback in the first round every year and a running back in the second round every year.
That is not true.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely not true. I would draft a quarterback every year.
You are what I said about the Dallas Cowboys. You want the splash. You don't want offensive linemen. You don't want defensive linemen.
No, you need those guys. You want those guys.
But just not
man, I didn't like Bob Quinn getting rid of Graham Glasgow. I thought he was a fantastic interior offensive lineman. It made no sense to me. I love edge rushers. I love big studs. What's that?
What about Ruiz out of Michigan, the guard?
Because I think you could wait till the fourth round and grab a guy like Bredesen and add him.
You care about offensive linemen.
I do. No, I do.
Take him in the fourth round.
I do care, but if you can go grab, so here's the comps on a guy like Ben Bredesen, okay? So if you like Graham Glasgow, and I loved Graham Glasgow, I thought that was probably one of Bob Quinn's best picks. Kenny Galladay, arguably his best pick he's ever had. Graham Glasgow was probably second for me, without really giving it a ton of thought. So Ben Bredesen, his comps are, he's a better version of Graham Glasgow. And I would argue that Graham Glasgow was your best offensive lineman last year. So you have Frank Ragnow and you have Graham Glasgow, and that's arguably 1A, 1B. You can flip-flop them however you want, but those were your two best offensive linemen. And if you can get Bredesen in the fourth, and he's equivalent to what you had with Glasgow, why the hell wouldn't you? It's all about value.
All right. Whatever you say, Stroz. You just don't respect offensive linemen and defensive linemen. That's all I got out of that.
That is not the case at all.
That's gonna do it. Enjoy the draft tonight. I'm sure we'll be reacting next week. Thanks for listening. This is the Practice Squad.